Most of my life, I thought loneliness meant being alone. And because I was almost never alone, I assumed the feeling would pass on its own. It didn't. It followed me quietly for decades, sitting beside me at crowded tables and sleeping next to me in familiar rooms. My name is Margaret, and I'm 74 years old. And only recently did I finally understand why I felt lonely my whole life. I grew up in a house that was always full of noise, full of rules, full of expectations. I was the oldest daughter, which meant I learned early how to notice what everyone else needed before they asked. My mother relied on me in ways she never said out loud, and my father admired me most when I was useful. I don't remember anyone asking me how I felt, not because they were cruel, but because I was so good at seeming fine. At school, teachers loved me. I was polite, reliable, the kind of girl you could trust with anything. I had friends, birthday parties, sleepovers, all the normal things. But even then, I remember lying awake at night with a strange tightness in my chest, a sense that something was missing that I didn't have a name for. I assumed everyone felt that way. I assumed it was just part of growing up. When I married at 22, people said I was lucky. My husband was steady, kind in a practical way, respected by others. Our life looked good from the outside. We bought a house, had 2 children, kept busy. There was always something to do, somewhere to be. And still, that same feeling stayed with me. Not sharp enough to call pain, but heavy enough to notice when the house finally went quiet at night. I told myself it was normal, that marriage wasn't meant to be exciting forever, that motherhood was supposed to be exhausting, that wanting more was ungrateful. So I swallowed the feeling and kept going, the way I always had. I became very good at being needed. I volunteered at school, remembered birthdays, cooked meals for neighbors when they were sick. People trusted me with their secrets. They said I was easy to talk to, and they were right. I listened, I nodded, I understood. But I rarely spoke about myself, and when I did, I kept it light, manageable, nothing that might make someone uncomfortable or require too much from them. The loneliness didn't come from lack of people. It came from being unseen, though I wouldn't have known to describe it that way back then. I thought the problem was that I hadn't found the right group, or the right role, or the right version of myself yet. As the years went on, the loneliness changed shape. In my 40s, it felt like restlessness. In my 50s, it felt like disappointment I couldn't quite justify. By my 60s, after my husband passed away, it became quieter but deeper, like an old ache that flares up when the weather changes. People checked on me after he died. They brought casseroles and kind words. They told me how strong I was. I smiled and thanked them, because that was what I knew how to do. But after the visits stopped and the house settled into a new silence, I realized something unsettling. I had been lonely long before I was widowed. His absence didn't create the feeling. It simply removed the distraction. It wasn't until a small moment, nothing dramatic, that the truth finally reached me. I was sitting with a woman I had known for years, someone I considered a close friend. She was talking about a fear she'd carried since childhood, her voice shaking as she said it out loud for the first time. I felt the familiar urge to comfort, to reassure, to help her move past it. But instead, I stayed quiet. And as I listened, I noticed a sudden, sharp envy rise in me. Not because of her pain, but because of her honesty. She was letting herself be fully seen, messy and unsure, and trusting that the world wouldn't collapse because of it. And I realized then that I had spent my entire life making sure no one ever had to sit with my discomfort. I had confused being loved with being useful, being valued with being easy. I wasn't lonely because people didn't care. I was lonely because I never let them know me. That realization was painful, but it was also strangely gentle. It didn't accuse me. It simply explained me. I saw the pattern clearly for the first time, stretching all the way back to that little girl who learned early that being good was safer than being honest. I began to notice how often I filtered myself, how I softened opinions, minimized hurt, laughed things off, how quickly I redirected conversations back to others. It wasn't humility, it was fear. Fear that if I took up too much space, I'd be a burden. Fear that if I showed my need, I'd be rejected. No one had ever told me that, not directly. I learned it in small moments, in sighs and silences, in praise that came only when I performed well. And I carried that lesson faithfully for more than 7 decades. Understanding this didn't magically erase the loneliness, but it changed how I related to it. Instead of seeing it as a personal flaw or a life sentence, I saw it as a signal, a sign of all the words I hadn't spoken and the risks I hadn't taken. In the past few years, I've tried something new. I've started answering honestly when people ask how I'm doing, even when the answer isn't neat. I've shared stories I once thought were too heavy. I've let conversations linger in uncomfortable places instead of rushing to smooth them over. Not everyone responds well. Some people grow quiet, some change the subject, and that's okay. What surprised me was how many leaned in, how many seemed relieved, as if they'd been waiting for permission to be real too. I've felt more connection in these later years than I did in decades of busy living. Not because my life is fuller, but because I am. If you're listening to this and recognize yourself in any part of my story, I want you to know something gently, without urgency. Loneliness doesn't always mean you need more people. Sometimes it means you need more truth. You don't have to tell everyone everything, but letting someone see you, even a little, can change the shape of your days. It's frightening, yes, but it's also a relief I didn't know existed until now. At 74, I finally understand that the loneliness I carried wasn't a failure of love in my life. It was a habit of hiding. And habits, even old ones, can soften with care. If you're younger than me, I hope you take this understanding sooner than I did. And if you're my age or older, I hope you know it's not too late. Being seen doesn't belong to the young. It belongs to the brave. Please listen to other videos in the channel and share with friends and family. Thank you for sitting with me. I'm glad you're here.